I will cast you into hell!
What's the worst that can happen?
Do you really intend to reopen?
Oh, yes, of course.
I think you're very brave.
That tragedy, that was years ago.
Everybody knows the story. Some opera singer went wacko and killed his leading lady.
That's disgusting!
You're such a psycho.
I'd rather be a psycho than a prom queen.
Well, I'd vote for you.
Well, because there's about 50 years of old costumes downstairs, and I have a feeling that once you go down there, we're not going to be hearing from you again.
That's when I told you about the orphan of the opera.
I felt like a bimbo in some slasher movie screaming like that.
I thought I was the one who was freaked.
Oh my God, Kate?
What's wrong with her?
I told you she was a head case.
Somebody help me!
Well, if Orsini's innocent, then who killed her? And who's trying to kill us?
I don't know. But we gotta find a way to get out of here.
Hi, this is Tony Odell from Chopping Mall, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues, episode 296. And this time we're heading north of the border, back into Canada, for one of their post-Scream efforts, The Clown at Midnight from 1999 or 1998. I kind of guess we haven't shown a huge amount of love to that many of those kind of sort of lower budgeted, slightly more obscure post-Scream movies. So it's going to be interesting to have a chat in the context of that. But yes, this is my pick. So it's a film I haven't seen since way, way, way back in the mist of time, I think, probably well over 20 years ago. So I was interested in catching up with it. I didn't remember a great deal about it. But so that is a feature presentation. But before we get onto that, let's have a little chat and see how we've all been doing. Erik, talking of chalk-faced whores, how's Toya doing? How you been listening to her recently?
I've been listening to lots of Toya.
Have you? Okay.
I've been avoiding The Clown at Midnight though, which is listening to Susie at the stroke of midnight.
You see, unfortunately, Erik, I got in there before you did, so that joke doesn't work anymore. I did, yeah.
No, I win.
I sent you that photo of Toya with that clown makeup and the chalk-faced white face with the big red nose. So I think we know who the clown is.
I just want to let everyone know that after almost 300 episodes, this is not an act. They do this on Instant Messenger day in and day out.
We're nothing if not consistent.
You guys are real.
We are. A real pain in the ass sometimes. But anyway, how are you, Erik?
I'm okay.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. So, and Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm okay too. I stayed up a little later last night than I probably should have, so I'm a little more sleepy today, but that's okay. I've got coffee.
Is that because you couldn't find your way back to your bed through the fog of smoke?
No, it was not. I actually had a few drinks last night.
Oh.
And I smoked.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll be nice and mellow this morning.
I'm very mellow.
And Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. So, before we get on to the feature presentation, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching recently. So, how long has it been? A week or two? And about a week, isn't it, since we recorded an episode, I think?
Something like that.
So, Joseph, have you seen anything you want to tell us about? In fact, I know you have.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen this week is the new movie It's a Wonderful Knife, which was directed by the dude who did Tragedy Girls and written by the guy who wrote Freaky. So it has that pedigree going for it. But for me personally, I think this is the best of the lot. As a matter of fact, I really love this movie. It's so good. It's they kind of eschew that kind of jokey comedy and go for more pathos. The characters are very sharp. They take the slasher action very seriously. The R rating is earned. There's some good suspense scenes. There's one scene where the characters are having to step over the killer. That's all I'll really say. Who's unconscious. It really reminded me of the scene in Scream 2 with the cop car. It's just a very unique premise. It's about this girl who saves her town from a serial killer, but then her life kind of spirals out of control and she wishes she was never born. So, like It's a Wonderful Life, she's sent to a parallel universe where she was never born. And so the killer never was stopped and is able to roam free. And then she has to decide, is this life better than the last? And it's just so well done. And it's like less than 80 minutes long, including credits. So it's so zippy. It wastes no time. I don't want to say much more because I believe I will probably be writing a review for your website, Justin, but I'll just leave it at that. I really love this movie. It's an instant Christmas classic. It's better than Freaky. It's better than Happy Death Day. It's better than Totally Killer. I loved it. It's so good. Go see this movie if you can.
Excellent. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. So obviously, is it on limited release at the moment? It's on wide release in the States?
Yes. They I think it's like 923 screens.
Okay.
I'm not even sure if it will get a wide release, but whenever it hits streaming or wherever it hits in your town, go see this movie. I loved it.
Because I think when I was looking it up, because I thought it was coming to streaming on the 10th, but it was obviously cinema release on the 10th. But I think I read it's going to be out on the 22nd of December. So just before Christmas on streaming. I think it's a Shudder exclusive, but I might be wrong on that. So, yes, I doubt we're going to get it at the cinemas here. So I'm going to have to wait until it comes on Shudder or another streaming service. But I know, Eric, obviously you've not seen it, but your curiosity piqued by Joseph's
definitely, yeah.
rave?
Well, I love, how much I love Happy Death Day, which this sounds like has a similar vibe. I liked Freaky. I've never seen Tragedy Girls though, so that's one I must seek out as well. But no, I'm looking forward to it, especially after that glowing review. Yeah.
I've got a feeling isn't Tragedy Girls a bit more cynical? If I remember it being pretty good.
I think it was a little too cynical for me.
Yeah. It was not as jokey as the kind of films that are out now. This one's not as jokey either. I mean, it's got some good, humor, but it's very downplayed and, for character development, which I liked. And like I said, I love the look of the killer. It's like this angel in white, all white with a white face, blank white face mask, and there's lots of blood, lots of, good chase scenes, some good suspense. See this movie.
Excellent. I did see just first of all, say, Nathan, I think have you had a chance to watch it yet?
I have not had a chance, but I mean, it looks great. One plot point, and I don't think it's a spoiler because it shows it in the trailer, and I've not even seen the movie, but I'm kind of curious, and Joe, maybe you can answer this. Is it a matter of once she makes her wish and everything changes, like the killer's still there, but she actually knows who it is, right?
Yes. I mean, that's all I can really say without spoiling anything, but yes.
Okay, because I'm like, I felt like I got that from the trailer, is that she knows who the killer is, but I mean, probably that nobody would believe her.
Yeah.
Intriguing. I did read in the Hollywood Reporter, the director of this has been trying to get greenlit Freaky Death Day, which is a crossover between Freaky and Happy Death Day. And he still said it's the kind of pandemic basically caused that not to happen. But he still hopes springs eternal. He said there might be a crossover. But in the meantime, we have It's a Wonderful Knife. So, yeah, well, thank you, Joseph. I look forward to your review. And obviously, you can, if you're listening, you can check. By the time this comes out, it'll probably be on Hysteria Live. So do check it out on there. So thank you, Joseph. Anything else?
No, that's it for this week.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you, Eric. How about you?
I haven't seen anything this week, but one I forgot to mention on last week's show was I did see Exorcist Believer.
Okay.
So this is the new David Gordon Green sequel, I suppose you could call it, to The Exorcist. It brings back Ellen Burstyn as Chris MacNeil in a kind of stunt casting, thankless role in it. Now, the film's got universal negative reviews. And so I went in with very low expectations. I didn't think it was as bad as the critics said. I still thought it was pretty dull, though. The first hour or so, I mean, the premise is two girls go into the woods to perform some silly ritual. They're sort of 11, 12 years old, and they they disappear for 3 days and they've lost all track of time, and when they return they're sort of show early signs of demonic possession. Ooh. And it's okay for that first hour, but then when it gets to the exorcism and the full-blown possession stuff, it turns into, you know, just like The Nun or one of those type of films where it's just there's no nuance, there's no subtlety to it, and there's just, it's not spooky or eerie in any way in the way that the original Exorcist was, and it's just basically two girls tied to a chair whilst priests, you know, say the Lord's Prayer beside them. And yeah, sadly for me, it's a big meh for Exorcist Believer, and I'm pretty sure, Justin, you would hate it because I know you didn't particularly have very fond feelings towards the Halloween reboot trilogy. So I think that this is very much along the same type of lines. I don't know, they've just made a very tame, run-of-the-mill film, you know. To be honest, The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe is a better film, and that's saying something. So yeah, it's as I said, not as bad as I thought it was going to be from the reviews, but nowhere near entertaining or good enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to wait until the third one, Exorcist Ends, comes out with Corey coming to save the day. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because like with Halloween, it was the irony was that they kind of he was trying to do something different with it. Certainly with Ends, and he kind of actually sort of kind of subverted most people's expectations of a kind of a Halloween sequel. And I know some people love it, but I thought it was, you know, it's kind of, you're making the end of a trilogy. And like I've said before, it's kind of like making the end of a Star Wars trilogy and like setting it in a, you know, like a desert bar when everyone, you know, just sits around talking for an hour and a half or something, or doing something completely not what you expect. And sometimes that works, but it doesn't work with this. And it sounds like this is kind of almost like a slavish kind of imitation of The Exorcist. They were too afraid to do anything different.
Well, it just feels so run-of-the-mill. It just feels like it could be a Conjuring movie or something.
Right, yeah.
Although at least the Conjuring movies have some genuine chills in them. This one is just sort of meh from start to finish.
Yeah, to be honest, I watched The Pope's Exorcist and I thought it was okay, but I'm just kind of so over those. I'd much rather watch an Italian 70s Exorcist ripoff than any of these new movies, because it's just all, you know, slight build up and then special effects apocalypse for the last 40 minutes, and it just becomes white noise.
Yeah, and you get this type of thing as well.
Where do you come from? From a cunt, you jerk.
You see, that's what's missing from Exorcist Believer and The Pope's Exorcist.
And if they'd actually put that in that movie, it might have actually, you know, if they actually did it with, you know, talking about subversion or subverting things, is actually they'd kind of intercut sort of Daniela or type, not Daniela, but like those kind of, some of those 70s Exorcist rip-off lines into the movie, then that would have been interesting. But guys, what about you, Joseph? Have you got an interest in Exorcist Believer?
No, I'm one of those people who likes The Exorcist, but I'm not crazy about it. You know, sort of like how Erik is with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. I laugh at the kind of cursing and vomiting, but beyond that, I just find them kind of morose and boring. Now, I will say The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, is just plain batty, and I like that, but, you know, these aren't really my types of films.
Not even Exorcist 3?
Well, yeah, that one's... I still don't really consider that an Exorcist film. I mean, it is, but it just felt like the exorcism stuff was shoehorned into a serial killer thriller in that film. So I think that's why I liked that one, because it was more focused on the serial killer side of things for me. But yeah, I'm just not interested. I'll probably see it eventually, but I'm in no hurry after Erik's review.
No, I know that Warner Brothers, didn't they pay something like Warner Brothers paid $400 million for the rights. So they've got...
And then it bombed hard.
Yeah, I think it did bomb, didn't it?
Yes,
it kind of bombs. It's one of those movies when it looks like it's made loads of money, but when you look at how much they spend on advertising, all those kind of things, you take that into account. Some of these big budget movies, it's like the latest Indiana Jones movie is considered a bomb, even though it made, you know, I know 800 million or more.
And Mission Impossible underperformed as well, the latest one.
But they need to make huge amounts of money, don't they, to actually make a profit?
And that's another thing. not to get, well, I guess it's not really off topic, but the new superhero film, I don't remember what it's called. I think it's like Captain Marvel. It's already bombing, and those movies are kind of bombing, and yet, you know, horror films are doing gangbusters at the box office. So it just goes to show you which legs have the strongest calf muscles in the industry.
Yeah, I think that the wheels are coming off the Marvel universe at the moment, I think.
And also it comes back to, if you throw $1 million or a couple of $1 million at a movie, and if you make a loss, it's still a loss. But if you go 100 or 200 million at it, and then you make a loss for studios, there's definitely kind of an appetite for movies that, you know, you've sort of less risk with them. And horror movies generally, unless they're like special effects bonanzas, like a Blumhouse, like The Nun or Nun 2 or whatever, then they're pretty cheap to make, aren't they, relatively? So, yeah, interesting. But what about you, Nathan? Are you interested in seeing Exorcist Believer?
I am, but I will admit that, you know, the lukewarm kind of response that it's getting has not made me super excited. But I mean, it's an Exorcist movie, so I'll definitely watch it. But I'm not expecting, you know, like something as fun as The Exorcist 2. You know, I want to see stuff like her going, "Oh, I was possessed by a demon. Oh, but don't worry, he's gone now."
Yeah.
Although, am I a spoiler alert? I kind of guess for it, although it's been quite widely reported. Doesn't a certain person turn up at the end of the movie?
Yes, a certain person does turn up at the very end of the movie, yeah.
Who was rumoured to be in the movie and then suddenly does appear in it at the very end. So I do wonder if that certain person might appear in a sequel.
Possibly, yeah.
Yes, so, okay. Thank you, Eric. Anything else?
No, that was it, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Nathan, how about you?
Unfortunately, I really haven't seen anything new since the last time we chatted. I think I got a little too addicted to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game, so I've been playing it like crazy.
Okay, well, fair enough. Are you still enjoying that?
Oh, yeah. It's so much fun.
Okay. So there's a few things I've gone through. I watched, I mentioned When Evil Lurks, I think, last time, which is the Argentinian movie by director Damien Rugner. So there was his movie he made before this called Terrified from 2017. I'd heard good things about that, and it was on Shudder with English subs. So I watched that, and that's really, really good, actually. I thought it reminded me kind of in some ways of the kind of original Dune the Grudge, the Japanese movies. It's the basic premise is there's a kind of like a street with some houses on it in a suburb outside Buenos Aires or somewhere in Argentina. And there's supernatural things start happening in the houses, and these paranormal investigators turn up to investigate it, which sounds very run-of-the-mill, been there, done that, not Conjuring, and Insidious, all those kind of movies. But it's got some really kind of quite bizarre and quite creepy moments and things in it, especially the one bit where a child gets killed and then comes back, digs themselves out of the grave and comes back and sits at the dinner table with a glass of milk. And then is found there and isn't moving, and they're not sure if he's dead or not. And just things like that. There's kind of definitely like a creepy element. So if you get a chance to watch that, I definitely would recommend that. I enjoyed it more than When Evil Lurks. So I'm kind of guessing none of you probably seen Terrified.
Well, how dare he come back to life and drink milk?
Well, yes, but it's very creepy because he's kind of all covered in mud and sat there and looking very dead and smelling dead, apparently. But they keep on turning away, and he just moves things that get knocked over, or he's kind of. So anyway, I won't spoil it anymore. But another one I saw, which is of a similar vein in so much that kind of creepy, sort of more like kind of low level, not low level, but those kind of shocks or those kind of creep out scares. I saw the original Hell House LLC some years ago. I haven't seen the sequels, but I remember really liking it. It's a found footage movie. But I caught up with, again on Shudder, Hell House LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor, from this year. And again, it's your typical, your mileage might vary. In fact, actually, another thing I watched on Shudder was I think it's called The Found Footage Phenomenon. And it's a documentary on Shudder about, and we're not being sponsored by Shudder, by the way, just to point that out, about basically what it sounds like, the found footage phenomenon. And it talks from everything from, they're going back to Cannibal Holocaust and even earlier up to kind of Blair Witch Project, Grave Encounters, all those kind of movies. So So and they've got quite a few on there, called like Nori the Curse, the Japanese found footage movie, I think 2005, which is really good. But this one is kind of again, you've got your paranormal investigators going to this house to investigate where a family were murdered in 1989, and then they find these creepy clown mannequins up in a room, and they're kind of investigating the house, and all sorts of creepy things happen. And it's kind of, I would say it's not perfect, but I really enjoyed it. It has those kind of, clowns are creepy anyway, and of course we're covering The Clown at Midnight. And I would say the clowns in this are creepier than The Clown at Midnight. But yeah, it has some very effective scares in it. If you like those kind of creeping, sort of dread-like scares, that found footage, I think, when it works, does really, really well. So, guys, have any of you seen any of the Hell House movies?
I saw the first one. Had a really creepy, like, finale. Because usually found footage is a big build-up, and then the ending is like, like craziness, and that's kind of how this is, and I love that.
You've seen it, Erik, as well. You've seen that.
I saw the first one, yeah, and I can't really remember a huge amount. I do remember enjoying it and found that it was really effective. Haven't seen the sequels though.
No, I've not seen the sequels. There's two direct sequels, but this one's kind of an origin story, so it's kind of presumably set before the first one. But I found that with the found footage, that sometimes it kind of, for me, I find the kind of creepy build up more effective than like something like Grave Encounters, where everything goes completely batshit. All the doors are slamming, there's hands coming at the wall, screaming faces. It just becomes, again, like that white noise. But what about you, Joseph? Have you seen any of those movies?
I believe I saw the first one. I couldn't tell you whether or not I did. I probably did, but that's it.
Okay, well, it's a recommend. If you enjoyed the original, then this one's getting the best reviews out of that. Last couple, just quickly mentioned, again, another Shudder, one I saw on Shudder was Night of the Hunted from this year by...
and I just want to say, if Shudder's listening, hey, if you want to sponsor us, we're more than happy to talk about your roster here.
Well, I've just been burning through Shudder because I just kind of subscribed to it this month, so I'm just kind of getting my money's worth. But this is Night of the Hunted by Frank Calhoun, who's the director of P2, and more important, probably better than P2 is the Maniac remake with Elijah Wood. And this is the one, well, the basic premise is a woman and her co-worker are driving back from the convention and stop at a gas station in the middle of the desert, and someone's got a sniper rifle and starts shooting at them. And that's kind of the basic premise. So it's kind of like, in some ways, it's not a slasher movie at all, but it has that kind of like people turn up and get killed, and there's the one character who's trying to survive the night. So I thought it was very effective. It's got great suspense scenes in it, and it also kind of has some more kind of cultural touchstones about why the killer's doing what the killer's doing. But I won't say that there in case of spoiling it. But that again, I think that one's been getting quite good reviews. So I take it. Am I alone in seeing that?
I think you are.
I think I am. So, well, the other one I'll just quickly mention was completely flipping back to kind of where we're kind of the era we're heading into now, is a review that I've just done for Hysteria Lives, which is for the 2002 post-Scream slasher Dead Above Ground, which is kind of batshit crazy. And I sent the video of the two goths, high school goths, talking about about their teachers being hunted down by demons, and they're talking about sort of like basically grimoires and all kind of stars aligning and the full moon and things like that, which I thought tickled Erik. Mm-hmm. But this one's got a killer in black robes with a giant axe. Killing off a high school class after one of the goths dies in a fiery car explosion a year later. So it is completely batshit crazy. I've never seen anything quite like it. But Nathan, it sounds like this is something that I imagine was right up your alley. Is it something you've seen?
No, I've heard of that title. I think I got it confused with Dead and Rotting.
Right.
No, I would definitely look that up. I'm going to type it in just so I don't forget.
Yeah, well, like it's got really the script is quite funny. It's got like some great one-liners in it. Some of the acting is terrible, but quite entertaining. and it has that kind of sort of medium budget kind of sheen, for want of a better term, you'd see in those kind of straight to DVD movies of the kind of the early sort of millennium post-Scream slashers. So it is pretty terrible, but as I said in my review, if you're a fan of bad slasher movies, you'll lap it up. If you're not, then you'll probably want to bury it 6 feet under. But for the more adventurous of you out there, I think it may be on YouTube, although you didn't hear it from me. So that's everything that we've seen recently. So we can move on to feature presentation. So I think what I have here is, and let me just double check, is a trailer for The Clown at Midnight. So I'll bring us back in after this.
I saw it. I saw my mother being murdered.
On the stage of life,
Some opera singer went wacko and killed his leading lady.
So many memories. So many ghosts.
7 students.
So, how are things in the Twilight Zone? Got any more visions from the other side?
Just got apart.
I have a feeling that once you go down there, we're not going to be hearing from you again.
You're on the big stage now.
To die for.
I'll take care of everything. Just as I've always done.
The killer was already in this room somehow.
I heard there's a bunch of tunnels underneath this theater. Come on.
This time,
Clown may be amusing in a circus.
it's murder.
What would be your reaction
in 3 acts.
to opening your door and finding that same clown on your front step at midnight?
The Clown at Midnight.
What time does the matinee start?
There's nothing funny about him. Available wherever videos are sold.
7 teenagers are stalked by a murderous clown while refurbishing an old opera house. So that's a very economic synopsis from IMDb. But basically, it is what it says. Essentially, that's the essence of the movie. It starts with a prologue where a woman is having an opera singer is having sex with a man in her dressing room. And when he leaves, someone dressed as the clown bursts out of a wardrobe and stabs her to death, which closes the theatre. Then, I think it's 15 or 17 years later, a group of students is encouraged to come to clean up the theatre, which they're going to open up for the college or I presume it's a college or high school theatre, and led by Margot Kidder is their teacher. I think it's Miss Gibney or Mrs. Gibney. And obviously Margot Kidder, of course, is slasher movie royalty, who's been, of course, in Black Christmas and also been in other movies like Sisters. So she was, she was kind of a good nod to the slasher movie in this. Also along for the ride is Christopher Plummer, which in some ways seems like a strange choice. Yes, the same Christopher Plummer that was in The Sound of Music. He'd been in quite a few kind of low-budget, medium-budget horror movies and that type of thing around this time. So he plays the owner in this. And you have the kind of typical ragtag sort of team of teenagers who are kind of coming to clean up the theatre. My favourites, Kathy's the kind of the main girl who fairly quick, well, you find out pretty much straight away that she's actually the daughter of the murdered opera singer. But you have the jock, you have like the kind of nerdy gay guy. And my favourite has to be Ashley, who is a fantastically. I kind of think, I do think, and I not to do her performance down, the actress, which I haven't written down here, but it kind of rivals that band line reading from The House on Sorority Row, all the way through the movie. It's kind of the actress, bless her, is thespianly challenged, I think, but in the best way. So she has a real Valley Girl accent, and everything sounds like Paris Hilton's intoning it. So you heard a lot of that in the intro and the trailer. So that was a lot of fun. There's kind of snappy dialogue in this. I'd say it's obviously came out 2 years, or was made Sort of roughly, I think it's made in sort of early 1998, so probably a year and a half after Scream came out. So kind of unlike Scream and some of the other films that followed it, this one's not so much interested in that kind of postmodernism quips, although there's a few of them in there. It does a kind of half-hearted stab at them. But this is actually kind of more akin to kind of an early 80s slasher, which is interesting because when we get into the background, it kind of explains why that might be. But yes, so the kids, the teenagers get themselves locked in the theatre, and yes, a clown, or maybe one or two clowns appears and starts offing the teens one by one. So it's kind of, for me, it's The Clown at Midnight. I really enjoyed it. It's not great shakes. I mean, the acting is questionable, I would say, but it fits the movie perfectly. I mean, Christopher Plummer and Margot Kidder are great in this. The girl who plays, the woman who plays Kathy is pretty good. I should have written their names down. I do apologise. But the rest of the cast are kind of pretty kind of amateurish, but in a way that's quite endearing. So it is quite stylishly shot as well, even though I don't think it's ever had a release beyond a kind of 4:3 kind of box, square box release for video that I've seen. Maybe there is one out there. So it deserves a better release. But and some of the slasher action is pretty good. There's a great scene when one character gets decapitated on a staircase and their head goes bouncing down the stairs. The clown, of course, is pretty creepy looking. All in all, I think it's a fun, largely overlooked kind of slasher from that kind of post-Scream age. So I'm kind of interested to see what you guys' thoughts are. And so, Erik, have you seen this one before?
I hadn't, no, so first time watch for me. And I enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought I really liked the premise, a bunch of teens in a old opera house sort of doing it up. It kind of had the same kind of setup as something like Evil Laugh, or I suppose even it reminded me obviously of what's it called? Stage Fright. So it had that kind of vibe going for it. As you said, the acting in it is iffy in places. It didn't bother me in the slightest. I thought the lead character, Kate, reminded me a lot of Neve Campbell in Scream. Her character has the same sort of backstory, the murdered mother, and she's kind of slightly morose and sullen. I thought the killer clown, like you mentioned, was quite sinister looking. Maybe until he started talking and then his mystique was taken away from him. But for the bulk of the film, he's kind of this creepy presence. I love the bitchy character Ashley, as you mentioned as well, who's constantly calling Kate a psycho, and she calls Monica Little Miss Thrift Store, which I thought was a great line. I also like the character of George, because he starts out, his first appearance on screen, he's kind of like, ooh, he's the bad boy, and we know he's the bad boy because he wears, get this, a denim jacket, and he smokes. And he appears kind of lazy and disinterested, and he looks like he might be the first to go, but I liked that his character arc makes him go from slacker to kind of hero. So I like when the film does that. And his character kind of has elements of Shelley from Friday the 13th Part 3 and Alfred in Happy Birthday to Me, because he's this effects wizard and he's able to throw together a replica of the clown costume in no time at all, which may come in handy later in the film. I saw another film actually that it reminded me of was Popcorn as well, and opera, I suppose. So there was a cozy familiarity to the film that I was really engaged with. I thought the characters were all fairly likable for the most part. I mean, even the bitchy Ashley, she's the kind of bitch that is entertaining to watch, even if you don't think she's a very nice person. And some good stunt casting, as you said, with Margot Kidder and Christopher Plummer. It's not a special effects heavy movie, but there is a bit of gore, and there's that good decapitation scene. It's mostly quick cuts, which are actually effective in places. I thought the death scene from Margot Kidder's character, where she gets an axe to the head, it's done in a really quick cut, but I thought it was very effectively done. The film maybe loses something possibly in the second half. It doesn't quite live up to the premise. Again, this is more to do with maybe budgetary constraints. It's a low budget film from the late 90s. They probably didn't have the resources to create something akin to urban legend or that. But I thought it was really competently made. And as I said, it was a real cozy horror film in that it didn't try to reinvent anything. It was exactly what it said in the tin, basically. I wouldn't say it was an essential watch, but I would recommend it as to people who are interested in sort of late 90s slasher movies. The one thing I was curious about, though, was is there meant to be kind of a supernatural element to the film? Because there's this blood stain on the carpet that never dries. There's that electric chair that sort of magically locks the sitter into position. All the straps sort of magically sort of lock themselves. And there's sort of odd touches like that are never really explained. And also, you're left asking questions such as, spoiler alert, why is Lorenzo living in the basement? Well, why Lorenzo's living in the basement is not the problem. Why is he living in the basement whilst dressed up as a clown for 18 years? Or however long it's been, I don't know. And I also love the fact that there's a character called Walnut, because you don't get enough people named after nutritious foodstuffs. So yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised. Direct-to-video kind of slasher movies are generally ones that aren't my cup of tea, but I thought this one, as I said, it had spirit and it had a great premise, and I could tell it was made with a lot of love. So yeah, I kind of dug it, to be fair. So yeah, that's my tuppence.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We'll discuss the ending, which had me scratching my head a little bit, some of the revelations. So when we hear from Joseph and Nathan. But Joseph, how about you? It's probably not your first time at this rodeo.
Yeah, I hadn't seen The Clown at Midnight but once, and that was right around the time it was released to VHS, so I essentially knew nothing about the movie watching it for the show. First of all, the movie is very 90s. Like Erik said, you get that bad boy in denim, and they've all got kind of that 90s coiffed hair. Second, it's very Canadian. I mean, you can tell this was shot in Canada. The accents alone should have alarm bells ringing. And third, it's very, very obvious who is behind the clown makeup. In fact, I half expected a kind of a flashing neon sign or an air raid siren when the actor appears on screen. The characters, they're not really fleshed out beyond kind of inhabiting the usual archetypes. I mean, we have the moody lead girl with the troubled past, the brooding James Dean type, the jock, the bitch, the nerd. Margot Kidder and Christopher Plummer are here cashing paychecks, and somewhere in there, a character is dressed as a murderous Pagliacci. Do you care to guess which one? I don't think you'll have a problem there. The movie has that sort of late 90s direct-to-video cheapness to it, despite some rather excellent camera work and flashes of atmosphere. So it kind of lies somewhere between flat and competent. But you know what? Despite all that, I actually sort of like this movie. Actually, if I'm honest, I liked it quite a bit. I'm not sure why, and this is a spoiler. The lead suspect in the film's opening kill, Lorenzo, like Erik mentioned, why he was still hanging around the opera house if he knew who the real killer was all along. I think they were going for some sort of misdirection, but either way, I found it quite haphazardly realized and very amusing. The ending, when the killer is quote unquote revealed, it really hit that kind of happy birthday to me sweet spot of really ludicrous plotting. I mean, you've got the corpses of all the people kind of set up to watch the final act unplay. There's some effective stalking scenes and moments as well. However brief they may be, there's some decent suspense scenes as the characters are likable beyond their shortcomings, so you don't want to see them die. And I was really surprised in the order of their deaths. I mean, I half expected certain characters to last longer than they did. We have to spoil this, so if you haven't seen The Clown at Midnight, stop here. The bitch character, Ashley, I think, I loved her and really wanted her to die last because I wanted to hear kind of a constant melee of insults coming her way. But she's essentially the first to go. Also, she was so hot. My goodness. Oh, man, she was hot. I also really love that we got 3 people dressed in Pagliacci costumes during the finale, though it's anyone's guess as to how they all kind of remained in pristine shape, considering we're told point blank early on that this opera house has a serious rat infestation problem. But, never mind. It's all very silly but fast-paced, and it has some fun flashes of, like, Phantom of the Opera and Stage Fright, and I liked all of these characters. I liked every single one of them. I don't really remember how I felt about the movie back in the 90s, but I was surprised how much I enjoyed it this time around. So, yeah, a thumbs up for me, though I do want to end my thoughts with a question for Nathan. Do you think the characters may have survived a little longer if they were equipped with Banaka spray?
Yes, because that saved Elaine.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to explain that.
Yeah, this is a Seinfeld reference. Elaine is stalked by a crazy guy who dresses up as Pagliacci.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I didn't know that. So, well, thank you, Joseph. And Nathan, was this a first time watch for you, or was it one you've seen before?
I saw it, way back in the day, and when I was working at the video store. And I absolutely, well, actually, I feel like the first time I saw it, I was a little more ho-hum about it. I guess, I don't know, maybe I was really into the, Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I guess I was expecting, something a little more along those lines. And like you said, it's not really along those lines. And, of course, the kills and stuff are, for the most part, kind of tame, except for that decapitation. But I will say, after rewatching it now, I loved it now. It makes me want to go back and watch, watch other movies and see, if I kind of have a different opinion now. Because I feel like there was several that I kind of was a little more lukewarm on at the time. And, I feel like as I've gotten older, my tastes have changed. But in this film, yeah, I loved it. And like you guys said, I love the character of Ashley. I mean, she's so mean unnecessarily, but it's just, and I know the actress is not the greatest actress, but to me, that just adds more fun to the whole thing. So yeah, I loved it this time around. And like Joe was saying, like, I didn't find any of the characters like particularly unlikable or obnoxious. They seem like, normal people. I felt that the heroine was a little morose through a lot of it, but I mean, she kind of had to be, since she had all the history and, her mom was murdered and things like that. Loved that decapitation sequence. I thought it was great. I almost wish they would have saved it for the bitchy character, because I loved her character, but I kind of thought her death scene was a little underwhelming. I felt like maybe she should have had a more grand death scene. But yeah, I mean, it's great. And like Joe said, some of the characters I expected to last a lot longer, and they don't. And I love when movies kind of subvert my expectations like that. I love the scene where the one guy, George, I believe, he's like wearing the Pagliacci costume, and Kate sees him and takes off running, and he chases her. And then, of course, we find out it's just him. And he's like, I chased you. I was just trying to calm you down. I'm like, having some clown chasing you at full speed, I don't know that that's necessarily going to calm her down. So I thought that was kind of funny. The gay character, he was fun. He's, had a lot of like good sassy one-liners through a lot of it. And yeah, so I mean, I thought it was a good time. It's a fun, forgotten, late 90s slasher. And I'm like, I really would recommend people seek it out, because I mean, it's got what you want from a slasher. A group of people trapped in the theater getting picked off one by one. I mean, fun stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I mean, I think off the back of that, a couple of talking points. One is it's interesting, isn't it? I think we're far enough away from the late 90s. I mean, we're a long way away from the late 90s, but the Millennium style slashers that came afterwards, that I remember quite at the time, a lot of them kind of underwhelmed me. but outside of some of the big hitters. And although there were some gems in there as well, but I think now there's kind of been certainly enough time now to go back and look at some of these movies, and I think the vintage also gives it some charm, perhaps as well. So I mean, do you feel the same way, guys, about like late 90s millennial sort of slashers?
Well, I've just in general, like 90s horror underwhelmed me at the time when I was renting VHS on that, but I found a huge amount of them now in retrospect are great fun. And one example I'll give is all those straight to video Amityville sequels, Amityville Dollhouse, Amityville The Evil Escapes, all those type of ones, which I hated back then, but now I absolutely love. And the same is probably true of the slasher movies as well, but The Clown of Midnight is just a little taster. I'd like to go back and explore some more of those sort of direct-to-video slasher movies of the era. But yeah, my tastes have definitely changed in the interim.
Well, sort of film-wise anyway. So,
what are you insinuating? Kajagoogoo and Toya are still relevant in 2023.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. So, well, thank you. Joseph, what are your thoughts now on those kind of that kind of era of slasher movies? Is it something you're now kind of looking back with some kind of nostalgia, or you're keen to revisit some?
Yeah, like Nathan, I dismissed a lot of these movies at the time. I thought they were just kind of boring, dull, flat trash. But, watching The Clown at Midnight, I'm thinking I should probably kind of go back and see some of these movies. One thing that's kind of interesting, though, is that I know Erik and I typically look back at the 90s and realize just how hideous some of the fashions were at the time, and they are. But what was interesting to me is I think the 90s weren't that long ago. It just feels like it was like, almost yesterday, but we're close. The 90s or this movie is closer to the time, say, Ronald Reagan was had his assassination attempt than we are to the 90s. So that's how long it's been. It's crazy to think that it's been that long since the 90s when it just feels like yesterday. I don't know what's happened to the time, but yeah, to answer your question, The Clown at Midnight really has kind of made me want to go back and seek some of these movies that I saw once or just kind of dismissed outright. So, I owe it a debt of gratitude for that, at least.
Yeah, well, I think if you ever sort of think the 90s weren't a long time ago, go back and watch or look at Josh Hartnett's hairstyle in Halloween H2O.
Yeah.
And you realise it was a long, long time ago. So, well, like I say, I'm sure there'll be some more of these 90s millennial slashers coming up on Hysteria Continues as we go forward. The other thing I wanted to discuss quickly before we move into background was I was kind of a little bit, as you mentioned, there's 3 Pagliaccis. Is it Pagliacci? Is that how you say it? Pagliacci, sorry, clowns.
The G is silent.
Okay, thank you. So at the end, so was it Christopher Plummer's character who it turns out is the one that dressed as the clown and killed he was in love with the actress and he murdered her lover Lorenzo, who was playing the clown in the opera, so he was keeping Lorenzo locked up for all this 18 years in the basement of this theatre. So was it Christopher Plummer's character the only one that was doing the killing, or was Lorenzo?
That's what I understood.
Well? Yeah, that's what I got from it as well. Although Lorenzo easily could have left that shithole of an opera house. He could have probably just pushed a wall down and left and went to the cops and said, hey, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is he still dressed as a clown after 18 years? Yeah. That's the big question.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't understand. Why did he wait around until everyone was dead to come and warn them that they were in danger?
The same reason, why does that girl wear the duffel coat into the swimming pool in Urban Legends?
Well, of course, no, I understand, obviously, but it's always fun to poke a few holes in these things. But yes, it kind of...
I also thought it was funny when he actually started talking to the lead girl at the end, trying to explain himself that he's not the killer. He sounded like Yakov Smirnoff. He's like, I did not do it. You have to believe me.
I did also love the fact that Christopher Plummer's character was able to rub off all of that grease paint in what seemed like seconds and get into his suit as well.
I always felt it would be so difficult for killers, when you have to, get all dressed up like the killer, but then, you got to be back looking normal.
This might be considered libelous, but Christopher Plummer, I think he's passed away recently-ish. So I'm going to say it anyway. I was speaking with Amanda Reyes off air, and she's friends with the writer of The Clown at Midnight, and he said that Christopher Plummer was kind of difficult to work with, and he didn't know if it was just he was always difficult or if he was appearing in a movie called The Clown at Midnight, which I thought was funny. But he said, yeah, he was kind of very set in his ways, I guess it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, he'd been around a long time, hadn't he? So, well, interesting. Well, let's move on to some background. Let's see what Nathan has first.
Many of the cast of this movie have worked with Rose McGowan, who you may know from Scream.
IMDb.
I knew Tatiana Ali did, and I'm not dignifying that with a response, because you're going to be surprised about the next one. It was filmed on location at the Walker Theatre in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. The theater opened in 1907 and was designated a National Historic Site of Canada in 1991. It was renamed the Burton Cummings Theatre for the Performing Arts in 2002. Do you guys think it was named a historical site because of this movie?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a plaque outside saying this is where The Clown at Midnight was filmed.
Oh, that's awesome. That's nice to have.
Is that all? Okay. Well, thank you. Well, actually, Joseph, because did you glean anything from the writer of this movie?
Well, I didn't speak to the writer. Amanda just kind of had a passive little remark, but I thought it was interesting. But going off what Nathan said, there are some slasher movie connections on top of what you guys have already mentioned. James Duvall, who played George, he was also in the underrated slasher from 2009, Cornered, which I really like. He was also in Go, which we covered on Patreon a while back on our Off-Piste. Not quite a slasher, but close enough. The lead girl, I think, Sarah Lassez, I think it was her. Yeah, she was in one of my favorite fill-in-the-blank from Hell movies, Malicious, with Molly Ringwald, which if you haven't seen, I recommend. It's very Canadian as well, but it's really quite fun. And again, not really a slasher, but close enough. Tatiana Ali, who plays her best friend, she was one of Casanova's abductees in Kiss the Girls. Like Nathan said, it was filmed on location at the Walker Theatre, and now that theater still operates as a concert venue till this day. And if you're in the area, be on the lookout for some upcoming performances from Machine Head, Meshuggah, Ministry, Gary Newman, Skid Row, and Michael Flatley's Lord of the Dance, among several others, coming in 2024. So that theater's still open. And speaking of music, the Clown at Midnight director Jean Pellerin, I think his name is, he helmed some of the most famous rock videos of the 80s and 90s, including Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls, Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood, Def Leppard's Animal, and Indians by Anthrax, just to name a few. Writer Kenneth J. Hall, as we just mentioned, he made his trade mostly as a special effects coordinator. He worked on films like Carnosaur, Critters, Dollman vs. Demonic Toys, Ghoulies and Ghoulies 2, Jack Frost, the Killer Snowman film, a couple of the later Puppet Master films. He did effects on Willy's Wonderland with Nicolas Cage, and he also wrote Nightmare Sisters, Terror Night, and Linnea Quigley's Horror Workout. And
I love those movies.
Yeah, he's also got a handful of acting credits in a few of those movies, and he was in one of my all-time favorite bad movies, and I didn't know this. I'll have to look for him next time. Robot Ninja from 1989, which was written and directed by J.R. Bookwalter. So, between the writer and the director and some of the cast involved, there's definitely a pedigree of some sort to be had here. Take from that what you will. But that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you. Very good. So, Erik, what do you have for us?
Just a few things to add to that. As Joseph was saying, it was originally conceived by the writer Kenneth J. Hall as a vehicle for Vincent Price rather than Christopher Plummer, but that was back in 1984. It was shot in 13 days on a budget of $2.5 million in February of 1998, and it was released straight to video in the US by Artisan on the 16th February 1999, and it got released on DVD as a double feature with a film called Phantom Racer in 2010. Phantom Racer, I had a quick look on IMDb. It seems to be kind of a possessed car type movie. James Duvall, as you mentioned, Joseph, he's in a lot of big movies. He was also in Gone in 60 Seconds, Independence Day, May, and Donnie Darko, where I think he plays the character who has the rabbit mask or
yeah,
whatever.
he is he's the rabbit in the film, I think.
Yeah. And Sarah Lasses, who played Kate, she went on to write a memoir, because the gist of her memoir is that she was once labelled one of the most promising young actors, but she kind of failed to live up to that billing and found work hard to get. So she began throwing money at psychics to see if they could help, tell her what to do to improve her fortune.
That poor girl.
Yeah, so she wrote a memoir then afterwards. It's called Psychic Junkie, a memoir by Sarah Lasses. And Tatiana Ali, now I had no idea who she was, but apparently she's really, really famous because she was in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but also as a child she was in Sesame Street in a good number of episodes. She's also in Jawbreaker, which was around about the same time as this. But she was a singer and had a top 10 single in the UK and the US in 1998 with a song called Daydreamin'. So at the same time she was making The Clown at Midnight, she was riding high in the singles charts. So there we go.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you. I mean, I've got a couple of little bits to add. I mean, you mentioned I saw that there was some local press coverage of this movie, and it mentioned about Kenneth J. Hall and how this was almost a golden age slasher. Well, not almost. It could have been, because it was envisaged or written originally, as you mentioned, Erik, in 1984 as a vehicle for Vincent Price in the Christopher Plummer role. So I mean, what do you guys think it would be? Do you think, because a lot of it seems set up? I mean, we talked about it. Well, I mentioned about how for a post-Scream movie coming in like a year and a half after the success of Scream, it doesn't appear to really be really emulating Scream particularly. Although, I mean, arguably, I Know You Did Last Summer, it played it straight, and Urban Legend was campier. And they're both fun movies. And the whole thing, and I think you mentioned, Joseph, at the end, you got a whole scene with all the victims set up in the front row of the theatre to watch what's going on the stage, which is kind of very Happy Birthday to Me, and it was redone in films like Mortuary and all sorts of other early 80s slashers, right through to Camper Stamper and all
They
those.
did one in Madhouse too, didn't they, I believe?
In Madhouse, yeah. So it was very kind of, so I could definitely see this movie being made in 1984 or being released in 1984. It would definitely work within that wheelhouse, wouldn't it? That kind of time period.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I mentioned the Happy Birthday to Me kind of reference there at the end there, it really felt like more of an 80s slasher than it did a 90s slasher. The 90s isms are more relegated to their clothing styles and their hairstyles, and some of the dialogue is kind of 90s. I think maybe they do throw in a couple of like little meta lines about horror films here and there, but it's not overt like Scream. It really does feel more like this was written in 1984, and I didn't even know that, so that's very interesting to know.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So a couple of other things. This is always envisaged to be a straight-to-video movie. It was filmed as one. So on Wikipedia, it says it's got like something like 22 or 25 $million budget.
But wait a minute. You're always lambasting Nathan for using IMDb and Wikipedia, and then you go and use Wikipedia, Justin?
Well, I'm correcting Wikipedia. That's a very different thing, Joseph. Going back because I went.
Justin, you get all your information from IMDb and Wikipedia too. You just change up the wording so it don't sound the same.
Well, that's clearly not true, Nathan, as you know. And anyway, I think in my defense, I looked at Wikipedia and I thought the $22.5 million budget, whatever it is on there, is clearly ridiculous. So when you go back and look at, as I did, look at some of the local press coverage in 1998 on the production of this, because obviously Winnipeg wasn't known as a great hub for movie making, even in Canada, presumably, and it was listed as a $2.5 million, presumably Canadian dollar, budgeted film, directed specifically for the video market. So there was, although it did actually get a premiere in Winnipeg. So the one and only time I think it appeared at cinema was at its premiere in Winnipeg, and it was screened for local critics, and none of them unfortunately liked it. But most of them actually said, I think it was kind of weird, and we talked about this before, that after Scream, a lot of the critics liked Scream, but just thought, aha, this is the death knell of the teen slasher movie. They'll never make any more. It's killed it off. And when they continue making them, they were really annoyed. And so this is a case in point. The critics there were just like, this is just another teenage slasher movie, which of course isn't a bad thing by any stretch. But what else do I have? Well, one of the things I thought was quite interesting when they talk about the theatre being haunted, and you're talking about a kind of potential supernatural angle, which isn't fully explored or has no resolution, really, as you mentioned, Erik. But the actual theatre itself is supposedly haunted by the actors, by two actors who drowned. A couple of English actors who just completed a triumphant tour of North America, and it culminated at the Walker Theatre in 1914. And they were returning to the UK on the Empress of Ireland, and it sank with the loss of 1,000 souls. And apparently, performers, and people who've been in theatre have heard applause coming from the gods, which are the seats right up in the top, and also other strange occurrences, doors slamming. Guard dogs, normally well behaved, would bark and refuse to enter certain rooms. So it probably was quite a spooky place to film. What else did I find on this? Let's see what we haven't already mentioned. What you mentioned about, I think Erik, you mentioned about Vincent Price, and apparently the Theatre of Blood played at the Walker Theatre back in 1973. So a little bit of kind of synchronicity there. James Duval, which you mentioned, he was actually a big fan of horror movies, and he told the Winnipeg Sun that there was something about eating pizza while watching somebody's head get smashed in. So he was clearly a horror fan, and he's actually talking about his favourite film at the time, which was Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland, the remake. There's an interview online. I think it's horror. Big Guy Horror or something. I should have written it down, but it's a defunct website. But I managed to track down an interview with Sarah Lazez about the film, and she was quoted in the press as well saying that Scream had made horror acceptable, and said that she was really squeamish about stabbing somebody in the eye, even though it was all make-believe. She said that Christopher Plummer was quite imitating on set.
Intimidating, you mean?
Intimidating, sorry, yeah. Intimidating on set. But a couple of little fun things she said. She said her favourite memories of it, she said, other than Liz Crawford's line reading of You're Such a Psycho, she said her favourite memory was actually offset, and she's dancing with JP Grimard and Tatiana Ali to the Spice Girls at a gay club in Winnipeg on a night off. So yeah. And she said that Margot was a complete sweetheart.
I can back her up on that.
When me and Joe met her.
That's my favorite celebrity meeting story of all time, Margot Kidder.
Yes, rest in peace.
Mm.
Did you guys guess the killer correctly?
Well, it's kind of you like. I mean, it's funny in some ways because you look back at all those films like Terror Train and Prom Night with Leslie Nielsen, and you have these kind of old guy name stars that used to be in those early 80s slasher movies, or late 70s slasher movies. So in some ways, he could have just been the name that was going to bring, I don't know, not teenagers in, but give it some kind of star appeal, I kind of guess. But I just thought as soon as he kind of turned up, you're just thinking, who else is the killer going to be? Although I guess it could have been just Lorenzo. But yeah, I kind of guessed. Did you, Nathan?
Actually, I did. But like you said, I don't think that's something for me to brag about just because there's so few suspects.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Erik?
Yes, I did, kind of, yeah.
I'd be amazed if you didn't, Joseph.
No, it's like I said, he's like the big name actor. He has no business being there whatsoever. So who else could he be but the killer?
Exactly.
It's Farley Granger and the Prowler all over again.
Yes. So, okay, well, what was the consensus on the group on this one, Joseph?
19 comments overall for The Clown at Midnight. Should have got a little more. I think it's a little underrated here. Adam Simpson says, definitely fun and with some surprising cameos from Christopher Plummer and Margot Kidder. I've always been a fan of it. It's very of its time and is clearly influenced by Scream, but it's made with love and has a lot of charm. And Jenny Hall Cameron writes, I've always thought of this as a bad cook. It had all these great ingredients to make a perfect cake, but just couldn't. Nothing was ever executed to its full potential to make it work. Margot Kidder was wasted. She deserved more. And also, this movie had the worst ever montage. And I can't believe we didn't mention that cleaning montage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It is quite bad, but I found it quite hilarious, honestly. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on all that we're doing. Listen on Amazon, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and about 1 billion other podcatchers, both good and terrible. Join us on Patreon for as little as $1 per month to help support the show. Or if you're financially inclined to do so, select one of those tiers to fit your budget for that extra monthly bonus content. That's patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues, all one word, and that goes for our email address as well, thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
Excellent. Yes, please do. So, well, Erik, let's see if you're going to make a clown of yourself or not.
It's my joke of the week. It's so great and fantastic.
Why was the character of Walnut called Walnut? Because she hadn't come out of her shell. I kind of made that up. But there's a kernel of truth to it.
I was trying to find a sound effect that sounded like a clown's nose, but I couldn't find one. So
hey, I thought of a joke this time too. I don't know if it's as good as Eric's, but I can like piggyback off of his right quick.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys know that Christopher Plummer and Margot Kidder on set played the game Battleship over and over again? On the final one, she actually sunk his battleship because you could say she had the winning peg.
Oh my God.
You get it?
I do.
I get it.
I do. Yes, I'm familiar with the game Battleship. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I win a peg because that's where they filmed it.
Yes, we got it, Nathan.
Well, y'all aren't laughing.
I'm like a clown. I'm crying on the inside.
Thank you, Nathan. I really appreciate it. Yes, thank you. So, we also have a little bit of feedback, don't we? I think we just
I have a bit of feedback to read
Erik,
here.
actually, before you get into that, this never happens. We just got a piece of feedback. It's very small. It's about It's a Wonderful Knife. If I can just read that out real quick.
Yep.
This is from Daniel. I mean, does this just come in just now? It says, I'm almost certainly in a minority of one here. I liked It's a Wonderful Knife much more than Totally Killer. It has atmosphere. The cast is charming. There's a cute emotional story at its core. It's sort of like if Lifetime made one of their Killer of the Week films as a Hallmark Yuletide movie on a bigger budget. And this time of year, I love watching those churned out corny Christmas romances with some Lubkichon, I guess, and a glass or 3 of whiskey and ginger ale. Wow, your tastes are weird, Daniel. Are slasher films supposed to give you a warm Christmassy glow? I don't know, but It's a Wonderful Knife did, and I liked it. And I would back him up on that again, guys. Go see this movie.
Excellent. Cool. Well, good. There's two votes for It's a Wonderful Knife. So excellent. Well, thank you, Daniel. So, and Erik.
And I've got something here from Shane Lambert. He says, hello, hysterical ones. Hope you're all well and had a spooky Halloween. I was behind on the podcast for a while, but I'm all caught up now, always anxiously awaiting the next episode. The reason I'm writing is to recommend a book to you all. It's called My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. It's about a teenage girl called Jade who is obsessed with slasher movies. Without going into details, I'll just say the basic premise is that she starts to become convinced that a slasher is playing out for real in her hometown. I won't say whether she's right or not. The references to real slasher movies are rampant throughout. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I think you guys would enjoy it. You stay classy, Shane Lambert.
Well, thank you, Shane.
Stay classy is a Nathan reference, I'm sure. Yeah,
I think it is. Yes.
Well, classy is important, you guys.
Yes. So that book is called My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Not heard of it? Any of you guys?
I've heard. Didn't he write the Final Girl book? A Final Girl book, I think. I might be wrong on that, but yeah, it's one to look out for. So thank you for the recommendation, Shane. So, I guess all that's left to do, well, a couple of things left to do, is one to say what we're covering next time. So whose choice is it, or whose turn is it?
Oh, me. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I've decided to be possessed by the spirit of Nathan with my next pick, I'm afraid. So we're going back to 1988 and Pledge Night.
That's actually a pretty good movie, I must admit.
I've never seen it.
Someone's been asking for for Pledge Night a lot, so they're going to be happy, whoever that was.
Cool.
I've never seen it. So
I was buying something from Vinegar Syndrome in the States, and just to bump up the package, I put Pledge Night onto the order as well, and received it a few weeks ago.
I hear you quite often try bumping up your package, Erik.
Don't need to bump up that package. It's all natural down there.
Okay. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that finally. And to say what we're playing out with, I was trying to find a song about clowns, but I didn't want to choose any Toya, so I thought I'd go for something adjacent. So I thought I'd go with Funhouse by the Stooges.
Oh.
Yeah, so something different. So we shall play out with that.
Not really.
What do you mean?
It's still your usual type of goth punk nonsense.
It's Iggy Pop, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
Well, at least it's not Icky Pop like Toya.
Yeah, exactly.
Rude.
I think we all know, Erik. So, okay, well, thank you to everyone who's tuned in this time. Thank you for listening, and join us over on Patreon for plenty of goodies. And we're just off to record a Patreon episode now on 1980s Alligator. So we're looking forward to that. So, we'll catch you next time on Hysteria Continues. So, thank you for listening, and say goodbye to the good people.
Bye. So long.
Goodbye.
Bye.